Oh, well, I'm so glad you guys are here this afternoon. This has worked out well, and we are going to share today about how we share our faith with our children in our homeschool setting. So share some books, share some ideas, and just kind of talk about how we do that so that we might, inspire somebody else that is looking for a solution and looking for a way to teach about the faith. Before we do that, let's open in prayer. And it's the month of May, so we'll do a Hail Mary. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I think it's always good for us to call on Our Lady to help us through this and help us do this. She homeschooled, herself and helped teach the faith to her own son who knew all. So she's a really good place to start, I think. So for today, kind of what we're going to do is some of us are going to share some of the resources we brought and wanted to talk about. And then we'll just open it up for Q&A for any questions that y'all might have, which usually stimulates other thoughts that we remember. Oh yes, and we've done this before. There's so many options out there on both approaches and books, materials to teach the Catholic faith that I think it's amazing that we have so many options, but it also makes it a little overwhelming sometimes. I mean, in all of homeschooling, that's true, right? We have so many options, but we just want to share what we love in our families. So I'm going to start today. That way anybody else who wants to pop on can join us. And all I brought today was what we're currently using this school year as our main religion curriculum. But of course I have shelves of preschool through 11th, 12th grade really now. And I'm sure that I have some overlap titles with some of these ladies because I know Mimi and Selena well. And I'm getting to know Leslie more and think we have similar tastes as well. But in our homeschool, we have kind of gone back and forth through what we do, and I've really settled into a place where I don't use a religion curriculum. I've tried a bunch, and I love them all. They're all very good. There's Seaton's books are fantastic. We've tried Faith and Life. We've done the Ignatius series. It's escaping me right now. But and I just have fallen into the pattern of choosing various resources each year. I will add a thought that for First Communion preparation and confirmation preparation, where we have lived, which we've done sacraments now in 3 major cities, 3 different places and parishes, we've always been asked to and gone ahead and used whatever books the church wanted us to use, but we've been able to do that preparation at home. Fortunately with those parishes. So in those times, I just did what they told me to do and, loved it because it was our faith. So I've used some of those different resources. But this year, my first grader is, I guess, going through, we didn't really start, is using this Chats with God's Little Ones, which is from Our Lady of Victory School. And it's this, this is my second copy. I had an older copy that was kind of all ratty, and then I found this one at a book sale. But I love this book because it can be started in kindergarten for some kids. I waited till first for my son. But it's written as a dialogue between mother and child. So there's these very short lessons. I do short lessons in pretty much every subject for my kids until middle school, high school. And even then, and you just read, and in parentheses is what the child is supposed to feed back to you. So I open to a random page, and the lesson is God makes things out of nothing. I say, who made all things? The child says, God. And the mom says, can you think of some things that God made? And they list some things. And then we thank God for all the wonderful things which he's made, and we say a little prayer. And then there's more instruction. When God wanted to make the world, he just said, let it be made, and it was made. He did not need to use things to make things, did he? God made all things out of nothing. Do you know the word that means to make out of nothing? And the answer is create. So there's just a very lovely flow to this book and very short lessons that I think, for me, it's a good precursor to some of the Baltimore Catechism that we are going to do for First Communion prep, or have been required to do, because it asks some of the same questions, but in a little bit lower level, I guess. And the book itself says you can, let's see, in the back, there's these evaluations, and it goes all the way from kindergarten to second grade. It says that you can kind of bring it up to another level, but I really do think it's kindergarten first. So since it's one of those, this is Our Lady of Victory School, and it's kind of a solo standing thing that I love to use. I wanted to share that. And then my third, fourth grader was finishing up one thing and starting another thing this year. So I brought both. I saw one of these. I'm sure I'm going to hold this up, and Selena and Mimi are going to go, man, I was going to share that. But he tweeted St. Patrick's Summer. Yep, there it is. This book is by Marigold Hunt, and every one of her books is fantastic. She wrote in the, I meant to look this up and I remembered, like in the 40s, 50s. It's 1950 is the imprimatur. And what it is it's a story of St. Patrick appearing to these children in England and teaching about the faith. And other saints appear to them, and they get to watch some of the scenes from our faith history unfold. And then St. Patrick kind of catechizes them through the story. It's a beautiful thing, full of wonderful lessons. And we usually read very short portions, and just sometimes we discuss it and sometimes we just let it sit. But I just love it. It's called an adventure catechism because it goes through our faith pretty systematically, but in a very beautiful storytelling. And this honestly is one of those things that could be for a wide range of ages. I mean, your preschooler will love the story. I would say go all the way up to middle school with this one. I put it in the middle because I knew when I read it out loud, my first grader would be in the room and he would listen. And my older two kids, the high schoolers, have already been through this book once with me and once on their own. So I let them, or I encourage them or require them maybe to read it again when they get kind of in that 5th, 6th grade so that they can internalize the information. So love this. But then he's also doing, we're like halfway through this one now, another gem I found at some point called Francisco of Fatima in the Heroes of Faith series, which I actually think, even though this is a series, this is the only book they ever published. It's published by the Apostolate for Family Consecration. And again, if you get the hint here, I like conversations and stories. So this one is a catechism kind of lessons where Francisco from Fatima is talking. He's the one telling the story and explaining how he learned about redemption and how he learned about the creation and fall of angels. So for me, it's another one that just inspires like a gentle conversation. The chapters are short. It's neat because we've already studied, a little bit of Fatima, and they've watched the CCC movie. And then when they get a little older, they're going to read the Fatima Saint book from the Windat, or younger, depending on when I use it. But then this just confirms it, and we get to talk about those deep things. So now I can say, do you know what redemption is? Do you know what incarnation is, in like 3rd grade, which is cool because they have, for me, it transitions my kids from the memorization of the answer into saying it in their own words. Does that make sense? Okay, that's why I love that. And then we're going to jump like 10 years here because I have high schoolers. And in high school, we use the Didache series. This one, what'd you bring? Oh, you brought the same one. So there's 4 main textbooks, and then they've subdivided them into different portions. And there's the first one. So we're doing Understanding Scriptures this year with my freshman and my junior because I wanted them to be doing the same thing. Generally, there's an order that of the 4 books that's recommended. I think it starts with Introduction to Catholicism, and then goes into Understanding Scriptures, and then the church history, and then morality, right? So my daughter started out with Introduction to Catholicism, which is a very full program and introduction into kind of your adult Catholic life. It's got everything in there. It's like reading the catechism in textbook book form with lots of engaging information. Last year, the time period of history we were studying was, I forget now, but whatever, it coincided with church history. So instead of having my daughter do understanding scriptures as a sophomore, which is recommended, I had her do church history, which fit in. And she was like, I'm reading the same thing in history as I am in theology. And I was like, I planned that. And then, and so then I switched her and I knew she would do understanding scriptures this year, flip-flopping those. And I definitely recommend saving the morality book for our senior year because it's way intense about life issues and, you know, adult issues and those kinds of things. But so for my son, he started this year with understanding the scriptures, and I'll have him do introduction to Catholicism next year, and then the church history, and then the morality. So they can be kind of shifted around. It's a textbook. I don't use a ton of textbooks, but they're so well done. The scriptures one was written / edited, I guess, was written by Scott Hahn, this book. So it's good. You know, it's really good. They're all really good. But I really feel like one of the most important things we can do for our teenagers is hand them all of the faith, not hold back like anything, because, you know, 4 years, then they have to go out into the world. And it's, from my own experience, it's harder to find it on your own as a young adult. And so I was fortunate enough to find my faith as a young adult out in college, but it's not the same for everybody. So that's what we're doing this year. And like I said, I didn't bring all the other things, but I wanted to share those things to get started. So let's switch over to Selena. Let you go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us what you brought.
Okay, I brought the stuff that we are using this year as well.
Great minds.
I have 2 full bookshelves of books that we use periodically throughout our homeschool adventure. But I'm going to stick to what we use this year. So like Jenny, I brought some Marigold Hunt books because they're well written. They're entertaining. They're fun. At first, I didn't want to use them. I was being judgmental. But after I read one myself, I realized they're actually well done. So in September, coming to the Feast of the Archangels, we read, sorry, it's backwards, the Book of Angels. So this has stories from the Bible of the angels. And it really, I feel like the world humanizes Jesus too much and humanizes God and forgets that he's all powerful. So these stories bring out the power of the angels. And that was just really impactful for my children. And we do, like Jenny, we review and just ask them questions and see what they got from the story. Their narration, what they found powerful. The Life of Our Lord, we do this one starting in Lent and finishing up usually around Easter. These are our read alouds. And then usually around Pentecost and after Pentecost, we do the First Christians. And we do these every year. These are our read alouds for the season. My husband said, we'll just stop when the kids repeatedly say, oh, I've heard this story. And they haven't said that because they enjoy rereading these treasures. Like Jenny, Fatima and that miracle was very important in our marriage. The story of John Paul II, the miracle of his assassination. So we wanted our children to get to know Fatima. So one book we love is Our Lady's Message. This one is more about the story of Lucia after her cousins passed away and her journey of what it's like to be a nun. And I remember after finishing the book, my daughter said, wait, I don't have to get married. I can be a nun. I can garden and pray and write all day. I said, yes, that's an option. So this really gave her a window of what it's like to be a consecrated sister, what cloistered life is like, what community life is like, and how she could do that if she wanted to and what it would look like for her. One book that we will use this year for my daughter as a read aloud to prepare for First Communion is Heavenly Host. So this is, again, stories that bring out the power of God. These are all Eucharistic miracles. Some are very old, some are very recent, but they all remind us that God is all powerful and that he can bend nature whenever he wants to. And so it was really impactful for my daughter when she went through First Communion. It was in addition to what the church prescribed for their religious preparation for First Reconciliation and First Communion. But we loved reading it as a family. So we read it every year we have a kid preparing for First Communion. And then our other 3 books, I'm just going to show you the stack, not individually.
Who's the author of that one?
The Heavenly Host?
Yeah.
Sweggart.
Catherine Griffin.
Oh, is it?
Sorry, it's backwards. Sorry.
Oh, that's not the Sweggart book? Oh, Griffin Sweggart. Oh, her last name is Sweggart.
Sweggart. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was like, wait. I'm writing these all out and I'll post them on the page.
Okay. The last stack of books I'm going to share, we use throughout the liturgical year, every year. They're all by Amy Welborn. Mm-hmm. So Book of Saints, Book of Catholic Symbols, and Book of Bible Stories. The signs and symbols I like because it's a third-party explanation of what you see in a church. So it's not me telling them, it's not their dad telling them, it's an author with a PhD telling them, but in a way that's beautiful for a child. The Book of Bible Stories, I love that one because it asks really good questions at the end of the Bible story, questions I wouldn't think of. And then the Book of Saints, probably for like a 5th grade reading level or a 2nd grader attention span. The stories are longer, but again, great prayers and great questions that I wouldn't think to ask. So it's us as a family learning about the stories and the saints together. So these 3 books we use in our morning time. The Book of Saints, sometimes the saint stories are longer and we save them for bedtime that day. But I did put them in my calendar, the ones that are important to our family. And so we read those stories at night.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, Mimi.
I'm up.
You're up, girl.
I hate so much religion.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Like, I was telling Jenny, so Jenny and I have been friends for a long time. I'm her youngest godmother, and we've been friends for a long time. I own Faith and Life, 1st through 8th grade, and I have never used them. One day they might be useful. So anyways, but I build my own curriculum. So you guys that weren't here last time when we were talking about build your own curriculum. So I have a lot of resources. So I'm just going to share things that I use. So I use the Détaché series. I would highly recommend that you use the Détaché series, that Intro to Catholicism, the year after, if your kids are making confirmation in like 7th or 8th grade or whatever, use it the school year right after, because it is an excellent way to make sure they don't have any gaps in their religion study. I used it in a co-op scenario with 11 different families here in Miami, and we had a lot of discussions, and we started to realize that the kids were getting 99% of what they were supposed to be getting, but the 1% that they weren't getting needed to get covered before they get into things like morality and Christian life and church history, because then it doesn't explain. So I would highly, highly recommend that if you're going to use the Détaché series, which hands down, everything I've ever found, that's what I would do. Do it right after they do confirmation, because it's a great way to just reevaluate that. So I have that, and I have all those books. I wanted to share this book. This is called My Path to Heaven. This book is so good. So I first found it with a couple of with Mater Amabilis, and they recommend it for different places. But this is an excellent book. I've used it as read-alouds. I've used it as kids that I kind of feel like need to have a little bit more reflection before confession. Anyways, but this is an excellent, 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 excellent book. Very rarely do I use books yearly, like every single year. I use this one every single year. My kids can tell you some of the stories now backwards and forwards. I don't care. We're using it every year until my first grader is no longer in the house. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. I also wanted to talk, somebody was talking about these books, and I just wanted to just show you guys, because they are really a great one for your little ones, the Treasure Box series. The Treasure Box series, it's a series that's sold in a group of 10, and then like books 1 through 10, and then books 11 through 20, or you can get all 20 books. But this is where my 17-year-old fell in love with Saint Therese, and it is just a treasure of just beautiful stories. And it's a great way to do your faith without it being a lot, but very thorough. It's an excellent, excellent, excellent series. So Treasure Box series. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that we really don't, sorry. My son is making his both of my sons were supposed to make their confirmation April 22nd. Unfortunately, because of everything that was going on. But my second son, my 12-year-old godfather, who's going to be his sponsor, just sent him a daily Roman missal, and Max is going to freak. He's going to be so happy. Oh. So it just came in the mail. So anyway, okay. Coloring books. I wanted to just talk about the fact that we do not need to make it so formal that our kids forget that religion is just a relationship with Christ. Something as simple as, you know what, take the coloring book. Let's talk about Our Lady of Fatima. Let's talk about St. Philomena. Let's talk about Our Lady, like where it's just relational. I have come back to this. I have talked to so many parents who have so many regrets about the fact that they taught the faith and they forgot the relationship. And it is so much more important that we remember the relationship. And things as simple as a coloring book when they're little, even when they get bigger, even when it's 4th and 5th grade and they want to just talk to their little brothers and sisters about how awesome Mother Mary is, or, you know, things like that, that it's really, really important. I also wanted to share my 2 favorite, our school is called the School of All Saints, because I'm obsessed with the saints. So if you ever need anything about the saints, have them. But I love these 2. There's 2 volumes. The other one is We Do Morning Basket, so the other one is done. It is a very simple saint story. So this is Our Lady of the Sorrows. And it's something very, very simple, but it has something every single day. We have a little bulletin board. I put what season it is. We put the date and then the saint of the day. Something as simple as that. This is like kind of our base work for religion. And then I wanted to share, a lot of people ask me about a good Bible for kids who are ready to read the Bible, like they can read. But the stories are getting lost within the Bible. I don't know how to explain that well, but this is an excellent Bible, which I first got from a recommendation through RC History. It is definitely more story-oriented. I wanted to show you guys that it's very story-oriented, but this is an excellent Bible if you're just starting, like Rachel, with your little ones, you know, where you can just read aloud and they can see the picture, and it's a really good one without it being the really scary pictures that happen to come from that other Bible.
Orange one.
I don't know. There's a couple of other Bibles that are like, have the pictures and they always make Jesus look so mean. But anyways, this one is a good one. Even though it does have very like strong pictures, but the paragraphs are very well done. And then it'll tell you, so exactly like here, it says departure, and then it gives the Exodus, and then it gives the story. So this is much more story-based, but this is an excellent one. It's a good transitional one, where you're going from the picture Bible, which to now we're going to read the Bible. I mean, my kids are reading the Bible in 6th and 7th grade. So this is a great one as we start to transition the Bible for young Catholics. It's very well done. And it has some maps, which is really nice, especially if you're studying Bible history as you're studying with history. So this is a good one. I also wanted to show you guys, because Max told me I had to. There are a series of books from Pauline Press that they have St. Joan of Arc, they have St. Bernadette. They're comic books. So again, Mimi is obsessed with the saints. So I have lots of saint things. But again, this is a great way for an older kid to talk to a younger kid about a particular saint, especially if they start to really like a saint. You know, and start to learn about some of their charisms, where it's instead of just doing, I don't know, this to them brings it very much, it's very real, especially since we do, I try my hardest because I build my own curriculum. I try to study the saints in historical order. So for us, right now we're doing American history. So right now we're in the middle of reading about Blessed Edith Stein and St. Maximilian Kolbe, because that's where we are in history. Mm-hmm. Max is reading about Blessed Miguel Pro and the Cristeros. And for them, the history cycle just allows them to be able to study the saints better, because it's like, okay, there are saints in every age, the saints of the Bible, and then the saints, then we study the saints that walked with Jesus, and then we're going to go into the, you know, what happens in the first 1,000 years. So that's how we kind of do our religion when it comes to saints, Bible history, church history, things like that. Like what Selena was saying, where, you know, you kind of go with the liturgical year. I'm a big person with the liturgical year. Use it to your advantage. If they could learn the liturgical year, they are ahead of 70% of Catholics. So let's go. Like that empowers you enough to be able to say, you know, we can do that. And then I want to show you. So years ago, back in 2001, I belonged to this forum, Jenny and I both belonged to it, called For Real Learning. And it was the For Real forums. And back then, my now 17-year-old was going through First Communion prep. And I was allowed to build my own curriculum. That our priest said, you do whatever you need to do, but on May 16th, she's getting her First Communion. So I felt extremely overwhelmed, because how was I going to teach this little beautiful 8-year-old to love Christ? So I'm going to show you, and Jenny, we can put this up because I think it's a huge resource. One of the ladies gave me this First Communion prep. And if any of you need to literally like build a curriculum, your parish lets you do that. Or if you want to do something, it's a sheet and it's got things to cover for faith, First Penance, Eucharist, New Testament, Bible verses, and then it's got a bunch of stories and books. But what it does is it creates a beautiful First Communion notebook for your child. And so this is Anna Maria's that was made 10 years ago. And so she chose the pictures, she chose the things. There's a beautiful picture of Our Lady, of Jesus giving her communion. And then what we did was we built it with all different things. So that's Anna Maria's baptism. And then we showed her godparents and her family. But then Tom and I wrote out why she was named what she was named, and talked about, you know, the feast days. And Anna Maria is born on the feast of St. Clare, so she was Anna Maria Clare. Her patron saints. And then what we did is we did narration work. So I would read the story from the Bible, and then she would narrate to me. And I would type it up. My 17-year-old has very severe dysgraphia. So I would type it up, but she would give me the narration. But then she colored, and I had it in the notebook. And we were able to do things like some different, all sorts of different things. A lot of this is from CHC, second grade, because it's awesome. But everything she colored, there's St. Clare, she's Anna Maria Clare. And then she learned the Anima Christi. But this was really cool because this is from CHC. So every time we would go to Mass, she would put her little X or her little check mark. But what was really great is that we didn't, hold on, I'm trying to find, oh, we did the 10 Commandments, that book. But I was at the very beginning of homeschooling, and we had a lot of family who didn't understand what homeschooling was. That notebook, and let me tell you, it took her 2 years to create this notebook. Anna Maria has lots of learning issues. This was like, I know it seems really simple, but for her, it was a huge deal. And then on the day of her first Holy Communion, she showed this to the priest that she had gotten, that she made her first communion, and she showed it to her family. And it was something that was absolutely beautiful for her. And if you're building your own curriculum, especially for a sacrament, I've got poor Louisa, my oldest daughter, is like, you didn't have that for me. I don't have a notebook. For a sacrament, when you're building your own, we have a wealth of resources, and this is something that's something very simple, and it keeps everything into. And if you don't have to do, or if you maybe have to do like a textbook, and you say, okay, I want to do this too, that's a great scenario. And I can put this up on the notes for whoever needs it, because I found it really, really great. And so yeah, that's First Communion. I don't know if you guys have specific. I really do have 3 shelves full of stuff. So if you have a specific question about something, you know.
Yeah. Well, let me add just a few thoughts, and then we can open it up for questions, and you can pull more stuff if we need it. But yeah, I throughout, discussions, we're sharing the things that we use and the materials that we use. And, some of it is more, orderly, like we do this book this year and this book this year. We do this with the whole family, and we do this with the whole family. But teaching our faith and passing on our faith is definitely much more than just the materials that we use and the books that we decide to share. Like Mimi said, the liturgical year is a gift to us from our faith that can help us. Kids love learning about the liturgical year and celebrating and honoring the liturgical year. And it can be kept really simple. Doesn't have to be a grand, make a giant meal that's completely in line with the saint for the day. Like, you don't have to, do that. If that's your charism and you love that, go for it. But just praying together every day before school. We start out every day with a prayer and the saint of the day. And I'll usually add something else, like either a scripture verse, or right now we're going through a section of the catechism together, just to kind of make the faith just a part of what we're doing. This is just how we're doing this. And, praying together as a family and the priorities and examples you set teaches the faith too. So while we're focusing on resources and sharing things, I think it's really important to point out that just living the faith is important too. It's equally, if not more important than educating, our kids in the faith. So I wanted to add that in. And there's plenty of resources for that. We could go on. And in the group, I hope we'll go back and continue to add more resources. But did anyone have questions or thoughts or things that popped up? Or Leslie or Rachel, if you had something that you wanted to share that wasn't mentioned, you guys go ahead and unmute and share.
Sure, I don't mind sharing. It's quieted down here. So I don't think it was mentioned at the beginning, my kids are kind of shouting, but we really like that, we call it the Lego Catechism book. It's the Book of the Saints. But that is just fantastic. And we actually had it coil bound because it's just easier to flip through. So we read out of that. We go in cycles. We read out of that a lot at bedtime. I also really like, let me see if I can be smart and flip it around. I don't know, maybe I can't. I like these really books. They're by Father Levasic. And these little $2 books, and they're like really awesome. So we go through these a lot. My kids are younger, so this one's like Gifts of the Holy Spirit, my first catechism, and they're really short and brief. Oh, maybe I'm not this part. So we flip through them again. We have a little bit of a conversation, and it sparked a lot of really good discussions. I've also come across, Maggie, please, it's not the time. Sorry, I've come across something. I'll show you. It's called Canadian Culture of Catholic Life. Ooh. It's not just for Canadians. There is a social studies component to it, but I will show. I wish I could be smart and figure out how to do this. These are the things that it studies. So we go over like the Blessed Trinity, Infant Jesus of Prague. And what I like about it is this is K through 12, and she gives you materials that you can use at every stage of life. And so some of them are, like my kids have like more of a picture book study on St. Andre Bessette, whereas my oldest is going to be reading a little slightly longer novel and studying his life and his works. And I find that's really great because we're all kind of on the same topic. We're just doing it at a deeper level based on your abilities. Mm-hmm. So I really like that. I suggested, I know a lot of you guys are more Americans, but I suggested because the stuff on the church is really good. Yeah. Even if, you can totally disregard the Canadian social studies, or you can learn that and be like the 1% of Americans that know anything about Canada. But awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to share that resource because it really beautifully goes through the church, and she works up, like there's going to be 8 units, and you can recycle it and use it year after year again as your kids age up and use more in-depth materials with them. So I've been really impressed with it.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Yeah, you reminded me too that just additional ways to throw in the faith. And we do, like Mimi said, the history that we choose includes the Catholic faith. We use Catholic history programs specifically so that that's just kind of included in it. And so that's great to have that social studies, that Catholic component. And also as soon as my kids can read independently, they're pretty much assigned some sort of religious reading for homeschool all year, every year on their own. So it's a lot of saint books. We like the Mary's books. We like the Pauline Saint series, the Windat books, the Vision books. I mean, then we move into the Tan books and the DeWall books, and those, they usually are reading some saints during the year on their own independently, just to kind of, learn, gain those stories. And then they may also have, especially as they get into kind of middle school, high school, I will give them those books that are like designed for tweens and teenagers that are, from a Catholic perspective, teaching about our faith, just as an added thing that will help them continue to grow in their faith. And sometimes I'll ask for narration or make a conversation out of it, but I don't always. It's more like, read this, enjoy this. So I think that's, important to keep in mind that it doesn't have to be, just the book that we choose, but that's awesome. Rachel or Megan, any thoughts? Oh, go ahead, Mimi.
I think that that's a very good point, because I just had a conversation with someone about this, talking about if you're blessed enough to be able to have conversations where dad talks to the boys about being men in their faith, and when mom talks to the moms about being women in their faith. The saints give us wonderful opportunities for that, but that it's really important from a very young age to explain to them the walk that you're walking as a mom. Then, especially when we go into the vocation issue, especially, we were just talking about this because today's the Feast of St. Joseph. I'm doing my consecration, and, we've been talking about this with other people, but the fact that it's really important that both mom and dad, if you're blessed enough to be able to do that, to really talk about what we're walking in our faith. Things like, I got my boys' books about why are you an altar server? Things about why are you called to serve at the church? And my boys will go and do Knights of Columbus stuff with my husband, or things like service to the church. That is religious instruction as well. It's not just learning the faith. And then beyond that, we are incredibly blessed because we have a very good, very, very good youth group that our children can be a part of. But the fact that to share their faith with other men and women, especially when they get to be junior high and high school, so that they're not the only Catholic homeschoolers, even if it's something online, like if you want to do a Homeschool Connections live class, or if you're out rural, because the more I speak to people whose kids have grown up, it's really important that their identity, we root them in that Catholic identity, and they are so much that Catholic men and women of God, and that they're friends, that they're not the only ones. There are other people in this world that are being raised by Catholic men and women, and that they're being called to be. So that our religious instruction is not just solely about the catechism and about the saints and but also about who they are as men and women of God.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely. And I mean, I only have one girl. I have 3 boys, but I found that to be especially true for my boys, is that they really need to be with other men and boys that they can look up to, that are faithful and that are talking about the faith, and are, including the faith, and dad included, but just, other scenarios have really been beneficial. Any other questions or thoughts or things you want to share?
I was going to reiterate that point about getting around Catholic youth as you get older. I, as a teenager, did not have a good youth group close to me. So my mom drove 30 minutes, 40 minutes twice a week to get me around Catholic youth. And fabulous instruction. We covered topics like Intro to Catholicism, morality, theology of the body, and it made all the difference. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that's hard to think long term when you have young children and you're drowning in nap times and feeding schedules. But those formative years between the ages of 13 to 17 made all the difference in my college education, as far as what I sought out socially, away from the academics of college life.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really, it's key as they get into even upper elementary into middle school, for them to have Catholic friends. And I feel like that's kind of our job, part of our job, not kind of, as their parents, is to help them find those friendships so that they can be close. And people criticize that as homeschoolers. Are like, well, you control every aspect of your kid's life. And I'm like, yeah. Because I want them to have good friends. I want them to have people in their life that are going to support their faith. And definitely. Not that we don't have other friends, that aren't Catholic, but they need the Catholics. They need that connection so that they don't feel alone, and whatever way that can be. And Mimi, you mentioned one way to do that is a live online class that's Catholic through Homeschool Connections. We've done the recorded classes, but I could see how, if you can't find the local kind of community aspect, that would be a great substitute. But in the early years, it's really about just reading stories and enjoying. And I mean, I think we have like 7 Bibles that are like, before you get to the actual Bible, of like each year they just kind of graduate into another level of Bible stories. And then, talking about the saints, and same thing. We have like saint stories for like all, age levels and all attention spans, and just to kind of incorporate those things. And then we talk about, Mass, and we talk about the things that we do in the liturgical year. So question.
I assumed that I would not have anything to share, but I don't think anybody used any of mine. So
ooh, well then let us know.
And my oldest is 8, so they're all like little kid stuff. So.
Yeah, perfect.
These are actually still being released. They're by Katie Werner. Mm-hmm. They're like little series, picture books. These are all the Catholic prayers. I like this one. It's a saint book. And it just has just a quote and a picture of the saint. So it's like perfect for little ones. And then this one is kind of more for preschoolers. I just got it for my 2-year-old. He really liked it. Father Ben Gets Ready for Mass. And it talks about, it really covers a lot just in him getting ready for Mass. It has there's a question on each page. There's like, they have to choose which robe the priest should wear, depending on what season it is. And then there's like a little holy water font, and they pretend dip their hand in and make the sign of the cross. I like that one.
Good one.
My oldest one, where my boys like comic books too. Mm-hmm. These are illustrated, and there's 4 of them. I just grabbed one. This is the Acts of the Apostles, but they have the parables of Jesus, miracles of Jesus, and the gospel, I think. And they're just little comic book stories of the Bible. My 8-year-old loves these.
Mm-hmm.
These are by Tan, and they have like a whole curriculum, but I just do the audio CDs, mm-hmm. the New Testament and the Old Testament, and my boys play Legos or kinetic sand and listen to the Bible.
Those are great.
This one is probably our most textbooky one. Tell me about the Catholic faith. And it's 3 parts. Like, one part is the Bible, one part is, hang on, I think saints, Yeah, and then the third part is the like sacraments and liturgical year. And then lastly, the Catholic morning basket plans from Your Morning Basket. This is the only one I have printed, but she has Advent to Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Morning Time with Mary, Feasts and Saints, I think.
These, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what we use mostly.
Awesome. Yep, those are all fabulous resources. I have about half of those. They're great. Very cool. Rachel, did you have anything to add or questions to ask?
No, I think right now, I think we're on the right path because I try to read them like a gospel story or a saint story every day. And then we say prayers before we do school stuff. So I think it's just good to hear that not everybody's using a curriculum because I'm like, well, do I need to know? Do I need a curriculum to teach them this stuff? But I think we're doing all right.
Yes.
So I was wondering, are there additional ways that I can help my children foster a relationship with Jesus outside of prayers and, of course, living the faith myself, but are there activities and things that I can encourage them to do by themselves maybe that would be helpful? So
that is an excellent question. I think that I was just reading an article about it was I think evangelical article, but it was about how to teach your children to have a quiet time and how to sit down with them and figure out, like read maybe a piece of scripture to get, together, and then have for kids, like a 2-minute quiet, like, okay, now think about that, or, put yourself in the story, or like a guided thing. The article wasn't very specific, but it got me pondering that that's something that we kind of do pause. We do silence time during our prayers, but I think that's what stood out to me as being key, is to maybe develop that quiet time habit.
Can I
develop like
interject?
Lectio Divina for them?
Exactly. Yeah, Leslie, go ahead.
I have a really good book. I don't have it with me. It's actually locked at church, but I bought it for children's liturgy. I believe it's called Sitting Like a Saint.
Ooh.
Don't ask me the author, but I have it at church. Yeah, and it's really good, and that's exactly what it is.
It's not.
Yeah,
oh my God! I just ordered it this morning.
Hold on, you're gonna love it.
I literally just ordered it.
It'll have like a saint, and it'll encourage kids to like sit like Saint so and so and do. Yeah, it's such a good book.
Is the author? Yeah, I'll list it on the site.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's been helpful for us.
Dynamic Catholic. You can get it on Dynamic Catholic.
Thank you.
Amazon.
Or Amazon. Yeah. I just ordered. Tan Books has their $5 sale right now. They have a bunch of the Mary Whiteette books.
No way.
The Lima one. Oh, so good. But it's $5. So I just ordered a bunch of books, and then I went to Dynamic Catholic, and I just ordered that book this morning.
Cool.
You're gonna love it.
Good.
You like it a lot? Leslie, you've used it?
I have, yeah. I use it with my own kids and with my children's liturgy kids too. We just do short little things, and it's like if they're getting, because sometimes we have like 20 kids in a really small room, and so we just use that to calm down, take a minute to pray. Yeah, it's golden. I like it.
Good.
Rachel, I hate to recommend something I've never read, but we just had a speaker at church talking about that exact thing. I forget the statistics, but that most Catholics, they forget to emphasize the relationship.
Yeah.
And the book it was a lady that works for our diocese came and that gave a speech or a talk at our church, and she recommended a book called, and it's for the parents to read. It's called Forming Intentional Disciples. Anyway, supposedly that has some tips for encouraging the relationship with Jesus.
Okay, yeah, I'll look for that one too. I think I've got at least 3 books here that I'm like, I better order these today.
Yeah, no, and I've been I like kind of reading about and studying a little bit about Catholic discipleship as well, and I think that that's a model that is what we're called to do with our children. And so there's no, yes, there is a difference, but there's no fundamental difference between Catholic discipleship and just discipleship. And there are tons of resources out there on how to disciple your children. A lot of them are written from a Protestant perspective, but the principles are the same, that we're walking with them. So it sounds like someone needs to write a Catholic version that's very specific about how to disciple your children. But I've gotten a lot of inspiration from like Sally Clarkson and people like that who talk about, you know, our ministry as moms is to disciple our children, is to walk with them. And so I think it's more about just kind of how you talk about the faith, share about the faith, kind of ask those probing questions, you know, and encourage them to spend that time with the Lord in whatever way it is. Like going to adoration, you know, and even if it's like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you know, I think just being in that in that space is a good thing. You know, being in that space is very relationship fostering. That's a weird way to say that. Yes, Forming Intentional Disciples is a Catholic book. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say too, if any of do your churches give you the subscription to Formed?
Yes.
If they don't, I have the number. My church is like, you give it out to whoever needs it. So I have a number for you. I will get it for you, and we will get it for you. I highly, highly, highly recommend anything on there, but there are some really good resources for parenting and for, especially as your kids start getting a little bit older. But Formed is an excellent way to kind of do it that way. And then the other thing that I would recommend, and I know it's going to sound crazy because your kids are all little, but Focus Missionaries give a college retreat every year over New Year's. It's called SLS. And if you look up Focus Missionaries for YouTube, they have all the talks are recorded. They are really good for us as parents to kind of listen to and hear what Catholic speakers are speaking to our children and our students in high school and in college, because a lot of times that's going to prepare you relationship wise, even when your kids are really little, to have some discussions that all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that's what they're talking about? That's what they're questioning? You know, this year, of course, because of that huge study that came out about the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, they talked a lot about what are we teaching our children? And of course, their spin is, what are we teaching our college students? You know, so the spin is them. But Focus Missionaries, you know, and you can follow them on Instagram, and you can, a lot of times, they'll tell you a scripture quote, and it's a great thing to talk to with a 6-year-old, because you're like, okay, why are we studying that? What it is. My 12-year-old, I had never realized that the Protestant Bible and the Catholic Bible were different. So we started to talk about that, and I was like, I had never told him. He thought that the Catholic Bible was the Catholic Bible, St. Jerome. He had studied it, and he was like, what do you mean they're missing books? And I was like, oh, all right. Last year when we talked Protestant Reformation, I think I kind of skipped over that. But it was something
or he wasn't listening.
Well, he wasn't listening. But it was something that came up in an SLS conversation. And it's just something that you could just listen to. You can put it on in the background and listen to them. Careful with the ones that talk about sexuality, because there are some ones. But, you know, Sister Bethany gives a talk about vocational direction. That is the best talk on vocation I have ever heard in all of my time. And it really has nothing to do with vocations. It has to do with the personal relationship with Christ. But that is a great place to just listen and be like, okay, well, maybe that's something that I want to be talking to with my kids. And like what you were saying, anywhere, if you can start anywhere, Rachel, what you were saying with, you know, what you're doing with reading the Gospels and doing that relationship is fostered every single day, just by the way that you speak to your kids. So, you know, you're doing a great job. Keep going up.
Sweet.
Yeah. I think that the takeaway, you know, one of the many takeaways from this conversation really is that teaching the faith to our children is much more about just talking about the faith with them and finding resources to stimulate those conversations and to help us start those conversations, because effective teaching of the faith, because I have known, you know, like you said, many people who just, you know, they memorize everything, but they miss that internalization and that relationship, and that has to grow out of our relationship with our children. So mom and dad have a relationship with children and are speaking about the faith, and the kids are more apt, I would think, to have a relationship with Jesus because they know what that looks like, a relationship with God because he's the Father. So here's my Father and how we talk. You were talking about audio and recordings. I know we didn't mention a lot of families like what's the podcast? Catholic Sprouts?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great resource for starting conversations. So again, I think that's what my takeaway is to remember that one of the ways that I have been most successful in passing on the faith is when it's about conversation and relationship and talking to my kids. So, and you all just confirmed that because you gave all the same kind of ideas. So thank you.
Yeah, when my kids were little and when we were trying to find the next right thing, we always gravitated towards, okay, what can I do that's 10 to 15 minutes that can help me grow my faith? Because if it's going to help me grow my faith, I'm going to be more peaceful, I'm going to have more joy, and my children are going to feed off those two fruits. Yeah. So whatever you can do, Rachel, to foster your faith, if it's, if you have a subscription to Formed and you turn on an audio that's appropriate while you're washing dishes, and your children see you doing the things of your vocation while growing in your faith, that can be free.
Yes.
We can't get through a whole rosary when our kids were 5 and under, but we could get through until peacefully. And then we said a decade, and then we said 2 decades, and then we did not try to go straight to a whole rosary. Yeah. So, and those just like those 20-minute lessons, just like Jenny, I keep my lessons short. In 20 minutes, 10 minutes, what can I do to grow in my faith? And that will trickle down to your kids.
That's an outstanding point. Yeah, because we have to show them that we're still learning and we're still trying to grow and do our own reading of the Bible and our own, study of something, saint books or audios. Yeah, in some small way, even if it's, like you said, really small chunks, they need to see that's something mom and dad do so that they will do that all their lives. Awesome. Closing thoughts from anyone before we wrap up.
Well, I saw a lot of comics shown, so I didn't know if people knew about this comic, but it's the Saint Chronicles. Yes. Each saint story has, hold on, wait for it, I'm gonna find it. Each saint story has a timeline for that saint and their journey, but it's all in graphic novel style. I got these off a resale page, but there's 4 chronicles and they each have 5 saints. So they're short stories. So great for 2nd grade level reading, that 8 to 9-year-old age. And maybe they haven't been able to sit down for a long saint story, but they like graphic novels. This is a great transition into reading about a saint's journey. And they're greatly illustrated. I love the timelines in them. The graphics are fantastic, and they're short. My daughter read all 4 in one day, and then we came to, okay, I want this novel for my 3rd grade year, Mom, next year. So,
how intense are those? My 8-year-old is very sensitive, and a lot of saint stories scare him.
They are intense.
So we've had to
they're intense.
not do very many.
These are what? These are intense saint stories. So a lot of them are stories. Saint Joan of Arc is martyred. So a lot of them are martyr stories.
Okay.
For me on those, we have them, but I have he's going to be 10 in a month. I have an almost 10-year-old who's super sensitive, and we have those, and he's not ready for those. We read the stories, if I'm reading the story and it's dramatic, or if it's a child version that's a lot less dramatic, he's okay. But the visuals of those comic books, that I know that would bother him because it's just the visual of seeing the intensity. They're beautiful graphics. But yeah, that is something we have to kind of think about, is which kid can handle what. And some kids are like, whoa, he got his head cut off, cool. And some kids are traumatized by that. It's okay
got one of each.
To skip those or to do those in a more sensitive way. We can.
Have you heard of Saints of Note?
Oh, no.
Saints of Note. Hold on, I'll go grab it.
Okay.
That one is a really good one, and it's not intense.
Okay.
Yeah, we for those kids, that kid, I read a lot of it aloud so that I can change the wording if I need to.
Yes.
So instead of his head got cut off, it's, oh, and he was killed for the faith. Period. Like, I don't have to be.
I say he was injured a lot.
Yeah, I can usually say they tortured him or they killed him because they know Jesus died. Like they know that's something that happens. But yeah, we do have to be guard against that because a lot of them had some very. But I find that once they get to like middle, like my daughter was very sensitive in the same way. But once she got to like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, she just was like, I'm as long as it wasn't visual for her, she could read it and it would be okay.
Okay.
So this is Saints of Note.
Okay.
It's Pauline Press, Pauline Kids.
Okay.
And you might want to still look at it, but you'll see it's a little bit more, maybe more read aloud, and then it has a few comics. But it's the brother and sister are kind of talking to each other. And so, hold on, I'll show you St. Isaac Jogues. So they St. John de Bruce. She talks about like what's going on, and then it'll be like that. So this one is definitely for that age that can't have
a little more
yet.
Cartoony.
Called Saints of Note, and I believe there's 2 of them. We only own 1 of them.
Cool.
Okay.
But it does have some good ones. That's a James Albron. It does have some good ones that aren't the typical ones that you see all the time. So that's why we this was from Max when I think he got this for his first Holy Communion.
Okay.
So then he read it in 3rd, 4th grade. So
Awesome. It's on the list. Fantastic. You have everything. So in the Facebook group, when someone's like, hey, I've heard of this resource.
Yeah, you can do it. Mimi has it on her shelf. Let her show you a picture of it.
Field trip to Mimi's house. Oh, just kidding.
It is out of control. It really is.
Selena?
And that would be my suggestion. Like all these resources that you see that you want, but maybe you don't want to buy all at once, get them as Christmas gifts for your kids, as St. Nicholas feast day gifts. Like tell your family. My family wanted to support us in homeschooling, and so they chose books off our curriculum list that were our read alouds, and they were gifts for our kids. And they remember. Lucia, my daughter, she's like, oh, that's my Catholic symbol book, Mom. That's not Rebecca's. I got that for Christmas, Mom. And it helps them.
When they go away to college, they want to take them with them, because that's what happened with Luisa. My oldest Luisa's like, that was my book. I'm taking that. And I'm like, how about no? When you have your own kids, you can take them. But for right now, it's staying in my house.
Generosity, my dear. Generosity. Oh my goodness. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we should wrap this up. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I'm so glad we started with this topic because it's so inspiring to see what is happening in all your homes and the beauty of passing on the faith. You're doing a great job, everybody. It's so nice. And it does pay off. It does pay off. We have no guarantees, of course. There's that thing called free will that, like, in the end, it really is up to our kids if they stay Catholic. But all we can do is do our best. And it's evident you all are doing your best. So praise the Lord. And thank you for being here. Our next call is going to be on Monday. It's going to be about language arts. I'm going to try for it not to be 5 hours. But there's a lot there. And so I'm going to talk to some people and get that kind of real structured. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A on the call, but we're going to have posts where the Q&A can happen because, language arts is reading, phonics, composition, vocabulary, spelling, grammar. What am I missing? So, but we're going to kind of highlight a few things, talk about a few approaches, and then, and definitely have lots of conversations in the group. So I hope you can join us in the future.